Hello, party people, it's your boy Dre. Hello, Sonic people, it's your boy Dre. And I'm here with a guest who has not been on Fine Time yet. His name is Thrak.
Hello. Hi. How you doing? I'm here.
Thrak is an American man who likes Sonic, because who doesn't, really?
Japan hates Sonic.
I know, they don't sell there at all.
They don't.
It's amazing.
It's so funny when people like tried to compare the sales of the game we're going to talk about with, say, Mario Wonder, with like the physical copies in Japan and being like, oh, look how much better Mario does than Sonic. And it's like, well, one, we already know this. And two, we know Sonic doesn't sell in Japan. So it's not a fair assessment to make, because people were using that when, I don't know if you saw recently, one of the heads of Sega were like, oh, we're still trying to compete with Mario. That's always been our thing. And it's like, was cute. It was cute that they said that, but it's whatever.
Yeah, it's like that's nice. That's a nice goal to have, I guess.
I mean, if that idea causes them to make better Sonic games, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
though I think the last couple Sonic games have been solid. So
I agree. So we're here, obviously, as the name implies. Yes, I still say that, to talk about Sonic Superstars. I guess I should say a warning up front that we will be saying everything about the game. If you are the type to consider Sonic games to have spoilers, you probably don't want to hear what we were about to say. However, I really, honestly, in my opinion, I really don't think there's anything to spoil in a Sonic game at this point. So viewer discretion advised. If you are the type to care about Sonic spoilers, I guess they will be in this podcast.
I mean, there are people who like the Sonic deep lore, so it's fine. Though I feel if they care, they've already played and beaten this game by now, so.
Definitely. Well, as we often establish when we talk, I'm old and you're less old. So I want you to establish how you became a Sonic fan. Everyone knows how everyone my age became a Sonic fan. It appeared when I was 9 years old, and now I'm a Sonic fan. But you were not alive yet, so maybe you can tell the people how you got into Sonic.
So to show my age, basically in between Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles coming out on the Genesis was when I came to be.
Wow.
So, but like my earliest video game memories are of Sonic, because I have two older siblings and they were around when Sonic was a thing, and we had a Sega Genesis in the house. And I have some faint memories of watching them play Sonic on the Genesis, or even say Mario, because we had an NES as well in the house. And what was cool was we had this really fancy setup with like a CRT in the middle of it, like a nice CD like sound system off to the side, and then we had the VHS DVD combo, the Genesis.
Classic.
And then we had a drawer, and when you open the drawer, it was lined wall to wall with boxed Genesis games, like in their cases and everything. And we had a bunch of stuff. We had stuff like Boogerman, Jurassic Park, Tecmo Super Bowl. We had a lot of sports games. My family's really into sports.
Oh yeah.
So played all of those. And then they also had a bunch of Sonic games. They had Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Spinball. I eventually got Knuckles later because I was like, it's weird they don't have this game. But in any case, I played the Genesis a lot as a kid, and Sonic was the thing that obviously grabbed you. And it's so weird that I can't really explain what I liked about Sonic so much as a kid, but I think it's sometimes hard to explain what grabs you as a kid. Because by the time I started playing it, this was about the turn of the millennium. So I must have been about like 4 or 5, maybe 6 years old, really. Just being like, this is cool. It was so like colorful and fast, and the music was great. And just the whole vibe of playing Sonic 2 specifically is kind of what drove me into, sitting here talking about this to this day, really. Like Sonic's always just kind of been there for me, and of course when you grow up you learn that Sonic is a controversial series, to reasons I don't always fully understand. I think some people are just memeing about it, which is fair. It's easy to joke about.
Yeah.
But it's just, some people go out of their way to hate Sonic in a way that I don't quite understand. But then people say, oh, well, some people go out of their way to defend Sonic. And it's like, well, I think the only reason people do that is to try to combat all the excess hate that it gets.
Well,
It's a
there's always like
reaction.
the Sonic was never good people, and then there's like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean, like that kind of stuff. I understand what you're saying though about two things: the Genesis and sports games. Look, if you had a Genesis and you were an American, you had a lot of sports games. I actually didn't have the Genesis growing up. I only had the Super Nintendo. My cousin had the Genesis, and the amount of days we spent over there playing like Madden 92 or NHL 93. I
Yeah.
mean, just
Oh, yeah.
forever, right? But he also had Sonic and stuff. So I would sometimes borrow his Genesis, and of course it was the old Genesis where you could plug a headphone. It had the headphone
Yep.
jack. God, I tell you what, that was the first time I listened to like Sonic music or any kind of video game music and like that spec with like headphones blew my mind. And of course, what's better than Sonic for that, right?
Oh, of course. And what's weird is for some reason we had both. We had the Model 2 and the Model 1. I have no idea where that Model 2 went because that's the one I remember playing on. But the Model 1 is the one that I think I still have it in that closet back there. And we also had a Sega CD as well, and I still have the CD and a handful of games for it. The Sega CD is that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But yeah, like the sports games on Genesis were genuinely fantastic, and they're very easy pick up and play games. Like your NHL 94s, your Madden 95s, your World Series baseballs, your Tecmo Super Bowl. I mean, I still play Tecmo Super Bowl this fucking day.
It's
And
still good.
It was quite a few years ago I learned they made 2 sequels for it. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? They made sequels? And I
Yeah.
played them, and they're much more in depth. And in many ways, they're better, but I don't like them as much.
I think
It's
the
hard to
simplicity of the old ones really work, of like Tecmo Bowl and Tecmo Super Bowl, I think, in my opinion.
It's so simple to be like, oh, on offense, you pick the play you're trying to do. And on defense, you pick the play you think they're going to do to try to like blitz them or whatever.
That's all you need.
Yeah, it's very simple.
So Sonic Superstars was kind of it came out of nowhere, really, because for me anyway, I didn't really know they were working on a new thing. Oh my God, he's holding up the box of Sonic Superstars. He has a physical Sonic Superstars, everybody. I want everyone to know this on Fine Time.
On the Xbox. I'm one of those weirdos who buys physical copies of Xbox Series games.
Can you believe that shit, everybody?
I mean,
it's just incredible.
They're weird little boxes, but I'm kind of drawn to them. Like, why is the disc on the left side? Why do they keep messing with like the spine and the orientation on the top? Like, why is there this little green bar on the side? So many questions with these.
I could go. It's a mess.
I could do a solo like 45-minute podcast where I talk about how weird these things are. Literally, I could, but we're not here for that. But I like them; they're cute. Like I have RE4 Remake down there. Like if Hi-Fi Rush had a physical copy, I would have bought that easily. I wish they did that. But
they might do that eventually.
Please, a steelbook, please.
Oh God! Summer Games Fest, Sonic Superstars just kind of appeared, and it was just out of nowhere. It was just
Summer
like,
Games Fest.
It was Summer Games Fest. So it wasn't really that long ago, and then it came out early October. So
3 days before Mario Wonder.
Yeah, that was a choice. That was a real choice. That
made no sense.
I mean, look, we're past the days of like, there's enough bandwidth now where you can have a Mario and Sonic game at the same time. But imagine if that happened in like 1993, like the world would have exploded when in the Nintendo versus Sega days. That's all I could think about because it was just like, holy shit! Imagine me 30 years ago seeing this; it would have blew my mind. Anyway,
because Mario World. Super Mario World was what, 1991, right?
Yeah.
It was
here anyway.
The 23rd of August, 91. And then Sonic 1 was June 23rd.
Yeah.
So they were 2 months apart from each other.
They were 2 months apart, but also Nintendo was launching the Super Nintendo, so it was a little bit different. The Genesis had existed for a few years, so I mean, I guess it's a little different, but still
a little bit, yeah.
And Sonic wasn't as big a after a couple sequels. So imagine like Sonic 3 pitted against like a supposed like Mario World 2 would have just made atoms shake. I do want to know your opinions on Arzest, who developed Sonic Superstars, because for those who don't know, this is a development house with, I don't want to say a troubled history, but the games to their name are like stuff like Yoshi's New Island.
That's a 3DS one, right?
That's a 3DS one with like the worst music of all time.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
There's Hey Pikmin, and then there's everyone's favorite game, Balan Wonderworld.
Hey Pikmin's not terrible.
It's not terrible, but it's not that good either,
No.
which is the whole reason why I was like, worried about this, because it's like, Arzest, really?
They've also co-developed Fantasian, which is the Apple Arcade thing with Mistwalker, which, funnily enough, my copy of Lost Odyssey right here, because I'm working on Lost Odyssey for Pixel Project. So, like, Arzest are one of those teams. I get the sense that if under the right guidance, they could make something interesting. Yeah. Because Balan Wonderworld, I wouldn't necessarily put the blame on them for that. It's probably a combination of Yuji Naka's kind of criminal incompetence, especially at this stage in his life. And then like Yoshi's New Island or Hey Pikmin is probably like Nintendo being like, just make a 2D game, because that's all anybody wants from us is 2D games. So
I mean, Yoshi's New Island, though, is it's not the worst game in the world besides the music. It's just that, like, it's just so hollow. It's so soulless. I think that word is overused, soulless, but honestly, it really does fit with Yoshi's New Island. That doesn't make it like the worst game in the world. It just does not inspire anyone to anything. It just feels like, well, that was a game. That was a Yoshi game, I guess.
I feel like the issue is after Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo, they've never even come close to matching that, because that game is fucking amazing. It's still good. You may not like it, but it is a high quality game.
Who doesn't? Well, okay, hold on. Who doesn't like that game? You have to be insane to not.
Well,
like
you're a
that
contrarian, man.
Well,
you
okay,
are.
I am.
But yeah, Yoshi's Island, in my opinion, is a masterpiece, and it's better than those Donkey Kong Country games.
I would argue, and this is a tangent, I would argue that Yoshi's Island, they've never tried to follow up, because Yoshi's Story is nothing like it. It's not even close. Like, it's a completely different kind of game.
And I don't even care for Yoshi's Story. It's kind of clunky, but
I like Yoshi's Story. Clunky. I like Yoshi's Story a lot, but that's like a totally different feel.
The problem is every Yoshi game since that I've played has been fine. Like, the closest in quality for me was Yoshi's Island DS. I think that game's underrated.
That's fine. I think it's fine. Point being, I don't think I just was like, okay, Arzest can do good work with the right tutelage, I guess, right?
Sure.
No, they're not to blame for Balan Wonderworld, but that was one of my fears going in. And also, I don't know how you feel about this, besides just a general, like, can we trust Sonic? Because that's always the question about every Sonic game, is that...
I get that.
I think pretty much every 2D section in a otherwise 3D Sonic game sucks. Yes, this includes Sonic Generations.
Generations is the best.
It is the best, but like, it's not that good. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I was coming off of Sonic Forces, which has maybe the worst 2D Sonic controls of all time. That was
Frontiers was bad.
Awful.
Frontiers was bad.
It wasn't good, but it was it was better than it was playable. I would almost say Sonic Forces was unplayable. Sonic felt like a bowling ball. It was awful.
See, Forces to me is so mid that it almost is like my least favorite Sonic game ever, because there's nothing that memorable about it. It just kind of happened. Like, it's not like 06 or Sonic Boom, where it's like this incredible like disaster that it's kind of amazing.
Yes.
Right? Or it's like, say, Sonic Colors or Generations, that are generally good, or Unleashed, which is interesting, regardless of your opinion on it. Right? Like, Forces just kind of happened, because I remember that came out the same year as Mania.
Yeah.
And Mania was a big deal, still is a big deal. And its shadow kind of looms large over this game. And I remember with Forces, I think they originally were like, oh, it's Project Sonic 2017. And we all thought it was going to be a Generations like sequel. That's kind of what they were going. That's what they hinted at, but it didn't go in that direction.
That was also around the time, though, they kept floating around, not literally the word Sonic Adventure 3, but they were talking about Sonic Adventure, and they were just kind of saying, oh, I really would like to, if we could go back to that would be great. If we could do, well, honestly, Sonic 2006 is Sonic Adventure 3, except it sucks. Yeah. So
that's why I still hear people clamor for an Adventure 3. And I'm like, well, one, we already technically have it. And two, I don't see Sega going back to that moniker because I think it would be smarter of them potentially to remaster or even remake Adventure 1 and 2.
I think so as well.
I like them, but they have aged really bad and could use with the right dev team. I think could use a sort of modern makeover. And I think it would I think the baseline for those games is already really good. So if you just kind of modernize it where it needs it, they would hold up, I think.
I wish Yuji Naka and that team were allowed to continue their work, because think about the huge improvement. And I like both Sonic Adventure games a lot, but think about the huge technical improvements from Sonic Adventure to Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure's frame rate is a big question mark. The second game is like,
it depends on where you played it.
Yeah, but like even if you play it on like Cube or something, it's a big question mark. I mean, still it tries to get there, but it doesn't. Oh, me too. So it's just like, oh man, and that's even cleaned up from the Japanese version, which was even worse. And then Sonic Adventure 2 is like, a year and a half later, it's just perfect 60 frames a second. Yeah, it's still a little bit jank, but the technical aspects were so raised. And then obviously over time, it got worse and worse with Heroes and Shadow and whatever. But
well, I think Adventure 2 is more refined because Adventure 1 is a really confusing game to play because you'll do the action stages and you're like, well, where do I go now? I spent most of my memory of Adventure 1 is not playing the action stages and having a good time. It's wandering around wondering where the fuck do I need to go, because the game doesn't do a good job telling you that, so you just kind of have to figure it out. Whereas Adventure 2 is much more streamlined. It's level based, which is kind of what Sonic should be, just level based. You do this level, great, go to the next one. Like it's easier to do that way.
I have a friend who didn't know anything about Sonic Adventure or Sonic Adventure 2 for that matter. So when the Xbox Live Arcade version came out, he was watching me play it. And this is basically him like experiencing Sonic Adventure 2 for the first time. The scene where they pop into the president's limo. He was just like, what in the hot fuck am I even looking at? Like, what is this? This was a real video game that happened? Yeah. Like,
and it pains me that like some people know who Shadow is, and then some people have no idea.
Yeah,
about Shadow. Like Shadow's borderline mainstream.
Yeah,
borderline. Yeah, it's a litmus test to how much you know about Sonic. Do you know who Shadow is?
Yeah, if you do, then you're
If you do, then welcome to the dark side.
But like basically, I wanted to show him this game because he didn't know that Shadow died, and then they just brought him back with no explanation. Now he just lives forevermore because he was popular enough in the fandom to bring back, but he straight up dies in Sonic Adventure 2 and no one gives a fuck. And that's what I was trying to show him. It's like, no, he dies in this game, I promise. And then
quote the Shadow, nevermore.
Fine time.
Before we get into like the meat of Sonic Superstars, let's start with what we thought about it overall, because I always think this is a good baseline for post-game shows to just start here so, the audience knows what we think of it first as we talk about the rest of it. So you tell me, what did you think of Sonic Superstars in a nutshell?
Well, I gotta say, I think I can safely say in the Sonic canon, this is a solid, I would say very good game in the canon. It's far from perfect, but I think as a relatively safe 2D platformer that tries to modernize the old games, but not in, say, like a memberberry way like Mania or Generations, I think it does a good job with what it's trying to do. Like having some of the original Sonic devs on there helps as well. And for what it is, like you could almost argue it's a new Super Mario Brothers type of Sonic game, but I think it does more than, say, the new Super Mario Brothers games do. And it does have its issues, and we will go into those issues because I didn't fully complete the game, but we'll go into that. But I can say for what it is, I liked it. I had a good time with it. There were some frustrating moments, but for the most part, I thought it was a really good, safe 2D Sonic game.
Yes, I mostly agree, and we should clarify that he means that he didn't do all the extra stuff. We both completed the main scenario.
Yes, I finished Sonic's story and I got all the Chaos Emeralds. So by most people's logic, I've beaten the game. But there is an unlockable mode I did not finish, which I'll get into, and then we'll get into that.
Okay. So I would also just like to say up front, yeah, I think this is a pretty decent game. Decent sounds a little low, but I guess it's more than decent. There's a lot of stuff I like about this game. I think the music is stupendous. I think most of the zones are designed pretty well. They got the game feel correct and all that stuff, which is, something you really do have to worry about when it comes to Sonic these days. So
Sonic's all about feel.
yeah, and this has the feel. There are some decisions, like you said, that are pretty grating and do need some cleaning up, but for the most part, I was really satisfied with what I got here. And the game ended up being really good despite those flaws. So but I do want to touch on one thing, and I'm not sure. So you say Sonic Generations and Sonic Mania are like kind of member berry games. I think I might push back on that. I feel like Sonic Generations definitely is. I don't feel Sonic Mania is.
I think it is. I mean, you know what I mean when I say the term member berry, right?
I do know what you mean.
Okay. I think that's becoming a colloquialism, because when I say that, people usually know what I mean by that.
No, I do know what you mean. I definitely
Good.
feel Sonic Generation steers way too far in that direction. I don't get that from Sonic Mania. I don't know how.
My issue in that with Mania is because the main issue Mania has, that I think most people agree on, is that there isn't enough original ideas in it. Like, just about everything in that game they pulled from the older Sonic games, whether it's the older like reusing all the older zones, but yeah, they remixed them, but a lot of the gimmicks that they put in there are from older games. And even in, say, the newer zones, which are kind of debatable in certain aspects, some of those ideas are taken from the older Sonic games. It feels like almost like a randomizer of like Sonic 1 through Knuckles, but with a bit of a modern text on it, twist on it. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to diss Mania or anything, but kind of the praise that it's gotten from a lot of people has rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, because again, it goes to the whole like, oh, Sonic hasn't been good since like 1994, which I disagree with.
No, of course
and
not. Yeah.
And there are great things about Mania. It's just I wish Christian Whitehead and those guys got another shot to do, like, say, a Mania 2 and put some original ideas in there, because I know they can pull it off. If they were like, if Sega said, okay, a Mania 2, do whatever you want, I would love that to bits.
Okay, so I think this is important to Sonic Superstars as well as what we're going to talk about with the level design and stuff. So I'll say it here as well. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it, though. Okay, so like last year, me and Ven, we did a show on Mega Man and Bass, the Super Famicom 1988 Mega Man game that didn't come out here until 2002. We got the Game Boy Advance version. It's the only version we ever got.
Is that game bad?
No, that we think that game is great. And that's why we did the podcast, because a lot of people think that game is bad. When that game came out, it was praised, as a lot of like Japanese only Super Famicom ports that are really good or want to do, that are really expensive, that not everyone could buy. But over time, that reputation of that game has gotten really sullied. A lot of people like really think it's terrible, and we just don't understand why. So what we did basically is say why we like it, and then we had the second half of the podcast is us going against what people say about it. And one of the things people say about it is that they don't think it's like a real Mega Man game. They think because it uses like the graphics from Mega Man 8 and two bosses from Mega Man 8, two boss designs, that they think it's just some sort of like side game or whatever. And two things against that. One, oh my God, Mega Man reused assets? That's never happened before in the history of man. Oh my God, what a crime. Okay. And then
they've never played 1 through 6.
Oh my, I mean, get out of here, right? And then, so you're totally right. And then number two, yes, they do use Tengu Man and Astro Man from Mega Man 8, but the stages are completely different. The music is completely different. And also, you get a totally different weapon. You don't get the same weapon as Mega Man 8. So in my opinion, those are completely different things. Yeah, the boss is the same. A different attack pattern too, by the way. So it's as different as it possibly can be while we're using those things. And of course, that's kind of what I'm bringing to Sonic Mania here, which is why I brought that up. Yes, there are some set piece things in Sonic Mania that are exactly the same as before. Oh, we went through the loop in Green Hill Zone and then went up in the air and got all the rings and landed on top of the loop-de-loop. Like, yeah, that's there, right? in my opinion, Sonic Mania does so much different with those zones that to me, it doesn't feel like playing Chemical Plant Zone in Sonic Mania doesn't feel at all like playing it in Sonic 2, in my opinion. So, like, I feel like Sonic Mania really triumphs in that regard. Yes, they're using old stuff, but they use it in such a different way that it's fascinating. And yes, it does feel familiar. I'm not saying it's not member berry at all. That's not what I was trying to suggest, but I do feel like Sonic Mania does a great job of that. Whereas Sonic Generations, Chemical Plant Zone is just kind of sad. It just feels like the exact same. It feels like a Sonic fan project, someone remake. What if we made it in 3D? You know?
Yeah. Some of the zone choices in Generations bug me. Like using Chemical Plant makes perfect sense, but yeah, like what I liked in Generations was the 3D versions because then they could get weird and wacky with them. And I think Green Hill they do a good job with that. But Chemical Plant, there's a couple good set pieces there, but I think for the most part it does kind of fall flat, you know? And yeah, I'd say Mania's Chemical Plant is also really good. It's just like it's reusing the same music. Like, yeah, it's done slightly differently, but it's still kind of the same. Like Mania does a good job of taking old stuff and doing it in a way that feels new. And it does feel new. But I've played that game a lot. And the more I've played it and really dug in, I've noticed that like, oh, it when I said it feels like a randomizer, in some ways it kind of does. You know, and that's not necessarily meant to deride the game. But, you know, I think Mania has become overrated in a sense, just because I think so many people have this perfect idea of what Sonic is, and they think Mania is really the representation of that. But I think a lot of the people who really praised it are people who have maybe barely played the Genesis games and don't really know what makes those games work. And plus, like Sonic 1 is rough around the edges like crazy. It's 2 and 3 and Knuckles that really sort of refine it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying about Sonic Mania, but I'm also in the middle of being like, I played all the Sonic games and I really like Sonic, and I also think Sonic Mania is that crystallized perfect idea of Sonic, and I have been playing them all. So I guess I'm both worlds on this one. So which is strange. Sure. But yeah, I understand what you mean. A lot of people who haven't played Sonic since the 90s came to Sonic Mania and be like, this is I totally get what you're saying. But the reason why I think that's important to Sonic Superstars, and the reason why I wanted to talk about that, is because I feel like Sonic Superstars has really good level design, and the zones are original, if you could say that. But look, man, it's still like here's the palm tree place. Here's the there's that place that looks exactly like Labyrinth Zone or whatever from Sonic 1 with the water, right? Is that Labyrinth Zone?
Labyrinth is the one with the water in 1, yes.
I feel
a little bit. It reminds me more of probably Aquatic Ruin from Sonic 2. But that water level isn't that bad.
I really like. I mean, Aquatic Ruin is an all-time.
Sonic 2 has some, up until like Metropolis Zone, has some fantastic level design. Metropolis Zone, it falls right the fuck off a cliff.
It does. That's why I like the first one more. I feel like it's more consistent versus like Sonic 2 is so up and down.
I don't know. Sonic 1 feels inconsistent because like Green Hill Zone is perfect. I really like Spring Yard for what it is. And Starlight, I've always liked Starlight. I wish they would do that kind of style more, but they haven't.
No,
but like haven't. Marble Zone, like I've played Marble Zone so much, so it feels like nothing to me. But when people bitch about it, I'm like, I kind of get it. Like, I think if the zones were paced a little bit, or if they were in a slightly different order, I think it would work better.
Maybe that's it. Because you notice, like, I don't know if you notice, like, if you look at like the level select, they are in a different order. I think originally they were supposed to be in a different order that way.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Because like Starlight Zone, I think is like stage 2 or something like that. And that would have made like more sense.
It's right before Scrap Ring.
No, it is in the real game. But if you go into the level select, it's like the second one.
Yeah. Coming off of Green Hill, it would be perfect.
Yeah, so I think that's the way they originally planned it. Yeah. Point being, people are praising Sonic Superstars for being like, oh, it doesn't have any old zones. It kind of feels like it does, though. They may not be called that, but I mean, look, man, Pinball, what is it called? Pinball Night or Pinball
Carnival.
Pinball Carnival, right?
Yeah.
Like, come on. That's Sonic...
Casino Night. That's Casino Night. That zone reminds me a lot of the like kind of casino zone from Sonic 4 more than
Oh
Casino
no.
Night from 2. But it's better than that. Sonic 4 is trash. But
Of
like
course.
it was awful.
Yeah.
It ruined Dimp's reputation because I didn't think Dimps was that bad before that.
They really did. That put him in the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
didn't they like develop like Street Fighter 4 and shit? And like,
Well, they did the
like
Advanced trilogy. They did the Rush games. Like
yeah.
they've
I
they've
love the
made
Rush
some.
games.
Yeah, they've made Sonic Advance 2 is like one of my favorite Sonic games. Like they've done some good shit, but they're it feels like they're kind of like Sonic Team where it's like they had a peak and then they kind of fell off and they've been kind of struggling ever since.
Basically.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. But yeah, I really don't feel like the motifs here are that original in Sonic Superstars. Not that they have to be. I'm not one of those people where it's like, I'm sick of them reusing this and that. Like, I kind of am. Don't get me wrong, but like we still have it's still palm trees and shit in the first level, you know? So at some point you just have to sit down and say, well, you know, how original really is it?
I mean, yeah, but it definitely feels like they're trying harder to be like, well, we're not just gonna do Green Hill Zone again. You know, they're trying to do something a little different. And yeah, the opening zone, I forget what it's called off the top. Was it Lagoon Park or whatever? I forget what it's
Oh
called, but
God.
I liked it. I like that zone. It's a good introductory zone. And yeah, as I would agree with you, the level design is really good. In fact, some people have said the level design is closer to say like a Sonic CD, which I feel like is slightly insulting.
I don't feel like that's true at all. First of all, I don't even like Sonic CD. I feel like that level design is vomit. So
if CD, if you took those levels and condensed them to like a Genesis cartridge, they would be phenomenal.
I just don't.
You know what I mean? Because the issue with CD is that they made these giant levels that are just there's so much to where to go, right? And then you have the time travel mechanic, and it's just excessive. That's the issue with CD.
Very.
It is so excessive. Like maybe Superstars is closer, like say a Sonic 3, because these zones are pretty big size, you know, and 3 has like pretty decently sized zones, but they're not overwhelming. Like say
yeah, and then you have like different here's the past, here's the bad future, here's the good future. Then it's
I always like when you go all over the sign, it just says future. I always like that.
I love it. No, it is good. That is a good bite.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to harp on it too much. I just don't think it's not super duper original in my opinion.
No.
It's just, but Sonic Superstars gets everything right because, like we said earlier, the Sonic feel is so important,
yes.
and I think Sonic Superstars feels great. It almost feels like the original Sonic game. Like the exact same physics. Do you agree with that? Because it's like, you know, it has that slow build and like to like lumbering like jumps and stuff if you're not going fast, which is the way it should feel so you can get that precise platforming and be able to go fast. I feel like there's some Sonic games that are not Sonic Rush that try to go like super fast all the time and then like it doesn't feel great. You know what I mean? So I feel like Sonic Superstars gets it right.
Yeah, because Mania is probably a prime example of like it has the exact same sort of momentum and physics that the Genesis games have. Like they feel 1-to-1 to me. And Superstars, it's not 1-to-1, but it's very, very close. Because when I first started playing it, I was like, it's not exact, because people were saying they got it pretty close to the originals. And playing it, I'm like, yeah, it's not 100%. I would say it's like 90%. You know, like if you know the games really well, like you and me do, like the old ones, when you play Superstars, you're like, yeah, it's not like Mania where it's like 1-to-1. It's very close though, but you get used to it. Like eventually you kind of figure it out.
It's kind of like Mario Wonder doesn't feel exactly like New Super Mario Brothers. It's like 95% of the way there, but it doesn't have that like slidey momentum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to stop on a dime in New Super Mario Brothers, but where it's not in Wonder.
Yeah, but it still has that like spin jump in the air. And
I want to talk about what our favorite zones maybe were. Not just one favorite, but like zones you liked in this game. We've talked about a number of zones already, but that Lagoon Park or whatever, I love that one. That was super good, especially the Act Amy, if you will, of Lagoon Park.
Oh,
perfect. that was great because it's like, for a few reasons. Visually, it was great with all the giant fruit you bop everywhere,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? But then, like, you get to do this, like, very careful platforming and, like, other, like, exploratory stuff, which is honestly part of Sonic. People always think of Sonic as, like, fast, fast, fast. No, that's not really, sometimes you do that stuff, which is why, some people may not like Marble Zone as much or some other stuff, but it's like I like that kind of stuff in Sonic. It breaks up I like it. So I
Yeah.
really like Lagoon Park. And then on top of that, it was just on brand for Amy to care about this little robot thing so much that she just went
Yeah.
down and tried to get it. The scenario, it was cute.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, like, because you know how sometimes it feels like in Sonic games where it's like you play as another character, it's not Sonic, and it just feels like Sonic, but you're just Tails instead, which I guess is fine enough. But like, I like that the character acts, like, Act Knuckles and Golden Capital or Act Tails and Frozen Base, they really played to those characters. I think that's, like, honestly kind of the best aspect of the game.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely cater the zones to whatever character that you're playing, which reminds me a lot of Sonic 3, because when
Yeah.
you'd play Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Knuckles, they would alter levels, but in very clever ways, where it's like, oh, this one area that you couldn't explore before Sonic is Knuckles, you just go right there, and they open up a new part. And so they don't necessarily do that here, but they find like clever ways of catering the levels more to whichever character you're playing, and they make Amy playable, which is, thank God, because in the advanced
Yeah.
games I hated playing as her. Unlocking her sucks, and by the time you get her, it's like her hammer is good for bosses, but that's really about it. So here they did a better job fixing that for her. And yeah, what I liked about the zones, like as far as like graphics were concerned, they're all just gorgeous. Like they're so colorful and just fucking beautiful to look at. It gave me that feeling of when I booted up Sonic 2 for the first time and playing through Emerald Hill. Like that level is so beautiful to look at still to this day. Like
It is.
I could stare at Emerald Hill all day. And here, like Bridge Island, I believe is what it's called, the opening stage in colors, does that for me as well. And it's really great. And we had mentioned it before. My favorite was probably the Pinball Carnival, because I'm such a sucker for like the carnival stages in Sonic games.
Me
Like
too.
Casino Night, Carnival Night. I love all those because it just fits Sonic aesthetic, and it makes me want to like Sonic Spinball, but Sonic Spinball is its own beast entirely.
Yeah.
It's a rough one, that one.
It's very rough. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I don't think there's a bad zone in this game. I think they all work for what they are. Like it's very consistent. Like maybe not a huge amount of standouts, but I think it works very consistently across the board.
And that's all it needs to be. Like, off the top of
Yeah.
my head,
Oh,
could
the
I
one where you're on the
recall?
vines is really cool.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
That is super cool too.
they do some interesting stuff where it's like, yeah, you're riding on the vines and you're trying to avoid the enemies. I think it's in Pinball Carnivals when you're on the platforms that are going back and forth, and you have to sort of time your jump to kind of get off of them as well. Like some stuff they do within the levels are kind of different, and they're neatly implemented.
I think my only criticism is that I probably wanted a little more, like, use of 3D space. I get it. You're making a 2D Sonic game, but there's like a few stages where you do like the bounce pads. You bounce like back and forth between, like, a couple different planes, or you have a few things where, like, I don't know, maybe it could have struck a few like extra angles, like when you're going down a big ramp or something like that. Not like Sonic Adventure, like crazy shots or anything, but like maybe just a little more dynamicism. Is dynamicism a word? I have no idea if that's a word. It is now.
It sounds right.
But yeah, maybe just a little more of that. Maybe a little more like crazy. If you go over a loop, kind of goes back into the background, and then like I think like Mario Wonder was pretty good at doing stuff like that. I kind of wish Sonic Superstars did a little more, but it's not a huge. It's just a minor complaint, I guess.
So you want it to be more of like a 2.5D type game.
Yeah, just a little play with the space a little more, but it was fine.
I get the sense that if they do, say, another Sonic Superstars game, which this game definitely feels like they're trying to see if they can make this like the series, the little 2D series they can do every couple of years or whatever. And with the Superstars 2, essentially, that might be what they do, is play more with that sort of space, maybe have some more like kind of vertical stuff, or stuff where like Sonic like comes at you from like a ramp and then he kind of goes up or something like that. You know, they could definitely mess with that more. You know what I mean?
I really hope they do. That is something I really wish they could like pop out, a Sonic. I hope like in, I don't know, 5-6 years around Sonic Superstars 4, I would totally be okay with that. Because like, speaking of Mega Man again, they made Mega Man 11 in like 2018. They made a whole new engine for it, and they haven't done jack shit with it since, which is insane.
Well, I don't know if you've heard the rumor, but Capcom said they have a game that is coming out before March that is going to sell millions and millions of copies, they say.
Then that game can't be Mega Man because, like, I don't think it sells that much. I mean, like, maybe worldwide it might crack a mil if it's lucky. I don't think Mega Man sells like that. I would love it to be Mega Man 12.
Well, that's the thing. If it's Mega Man 12 and it sells 2 million copies, there you go. Millions and millions.
Fine time, fine time, fine time.
We gotta talk about these bonus stages because usually I jot down a few thoughts. I didn't jot down anything because I still, to this day, do not know how I feel about anything that happened here. So
I just said I like
where
them.
do you want to start? Like,
I like them.
I guess I like them too, but are they okay? They bring back the Sonic one, like the spinny levels, right?
The mazes, yes.
The mazes. There's a lot of them, man.
But they're optional.
Okay, but you don't like, I mean, it doesn't feel great to me to have like, you get to the thing, oh, here's the thing you can go into, and then it's like, oh my God, we're just gonna keep doing this. Once it's set in on me where it's like, oh my God, they're really just gonna make a million of these.
Like there's like when you go in and do them, there's 3 of them you have to do in a row.
Oh my Lord. Like, look, I like them, but that feels like a $10 download game by itself where I could just play a bunch of them. Like if they sold Blue Sphere by itself or something.
Ooh, now we're talking. Yeah. Love Blue Sphere.
Me too. And I think I would be okay with that. It's just that, like, I don't know, man. I guess you don't have to do them, but
because all they get you are medals, and I believe the medals are only spent on cosmetics for your like multiplayer character.
Sega has a habit of doing shit like that in their games lately, and I really wish they wouldn't. But
it's
whatever.
Very weird.
That's another thing.
Yeah, because the mazes, they're from Sonic 1, and the Sonic 1 mazes I've never really cared for, just because
I think they're fine.
Yeah, but they always felt kind of haphazard to me that they just kind of threw them together.
Better than the half pipe.
I mean, the half pipe's not bad, but
don't like the half pipe.
It's been overdone. I would agree with that. But Blue Sphere is perfect, and it's a shame they haven't done more Blue Sphere because I fucking love Blue Sphere. But then again, I kind of understand. But with the mazes, like they had them in Sonic 4, and they were just nothing. They were so like easy that they just felt completely pointless.
Sonic 4 is such fucking trash.
I was so hyped for that game when it came out too.
For real? Oh God!
Like I got it on my Wii. In fact, the Wii I
no.
have is still the one that has it, and I never played episode 2. Never bothered because 1 was so bad. I was like, I don't want to do episode. And I've heard episode 2 is better. That they fixed a lot of issues, but the damage was done.
No, we knew that was going to be trash from the jump. We thought like, this is going to be
I thought it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be good.
Oh no, I'm
What
so
a
sorry.
Fool I was. Because then Sonic Mania could have been Sonic 4 and it would have fit perfectly.
Yeah, but that's already been ruined.
But anyways, the mazes here, I think they're fine, like the way they do them, because they're not super easy like in 4. They're not ridiculously hard like in Sonic 1. They found a nice middle ground, and they introduce a lot of interesting gimmicks in them, like, slightly changing them or the way they sort of place the bumpers, like the up, down, reverse ones. They definitely feel more carefully thought out than before,
For sure.
It's just a shame all they're used for is essentially medals that are kind of useless at the end of the day.
Sega has a habit of that. Like I said, I really wish they wouldn't. They do a lot of that shit.
Yeah, they'll make a big budget online shooter, and then it's done, and then they'll just cancel it anyway.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, never mind, we're not doing
hyenas. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, I guess they're fine. I do like that. There's a Taito game back in the day called Camel Tree. I think there was a Super Nintendo port called On the Ball, and you've like rotated the maze, you know, with that. That's kind of what these particular Sonic reminded me of because they tricked them up so much. And then there's like the Emerald stages, which those are the ones where I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about this at all. I definitely like the maze stages. The Emerald ones feel, I don't know, maybe you have something better to say than me. I don't know how I feel about those at all.
So the best way to describe the Emerald stages are you're in this sort of random area of space, right? And there's the Emerald and it's kind of floating away. In a way, it's kind of almost set up like Sonic CD where you have to chase the Emerald, right? And it's this kind of open area. But instead of, you know, jumping around and avoiding enemies, you're just kind of floating in midair, but you can just pull like a laser whip or something and you attach it to, or it's almost like a lasso, like, and you attach it to these random little like blue dots and they swing you. And you're supposed to use the momentum to sort of catch up to the Emerald so you can attach your little laser whip to it and grab the Emerald, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you go on further, they give you, like, you can find ones that say like shoot you up or shoot you like in a specific direction. There'll be ones that give you rings, which help with the time, because it does the supersonic thing where the rings are sort of your time, and the more you get, you can keep going. And then there'll be the spike ball ones that, of course, damage you and take some rings away.
Right.
And I think how they're designed, it's like it's simple enough to kind of just jump into it, but it's complex enough to where it's not a cakewalk. You know, I did them all. Of course, I have all the Emeralds, and most of them took me maybe 2 tries to get. There was a couple I got the first try. There was one specifically, I think it was for the 5th Emerald, that took me a long time because it's the one that has you at the bottom and you have to go up.
Yeah,
it's all vertical, and
that's
that one,
rough, yeah,
it's a pain in the ass to get. It is rough, but I eventually figured it out because the trick is, I kept just like shooting up and then trying to like float down to get to the Emerald. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, like, you know, get as close as you can to up. So when you try to shoot up, you can just grab it real quick. You know, it's rough. That one took me probably a dozen plus tries to get it, but I eventually did because you can find wherever, say, the big ring is that you jump into. You know, if you say fuck up, right, you can just leave the stage, come back, and just try it again. Because this game completely gets rid of lives, which I think is honestly a benefit, especially with some negative aspects of the game. It's a huge benefit. And but what's weird is the time is still there, but it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, because I was getting to a point where it's like, oh, I'm almost at 10 minutes. I'm gonna die because I'm used to that, right? It kept going, and I was like, oh, that's weird.
That is weird. It is strange that they do have it. Maybe it's just a vestige of, man, they don't know what they're doing sometimes with the with the platformers. Sometimes, because it's like so like Mario Wonder has lives, but it doesn't have a time limit.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are we doing? Are we doing the platformer thing or are we not? Like, if you can't just keep moving these pieces around.
Yeah, or is it like Celeste, where it just counts all your deaths? So when you're done, it's like, that's how many times I died. Let's see if I can do less times this time, which is like a different type of challenge. You know what I mean?
Yes, of course. I guess overall I do like the bonus levels. I just thought it was so weird. I think it hit me when you said laser whip. I think that's what hit me. Yeah. It's like, why is Sonic doing this? I think that's why. I guess Sonic can do anything because it's a bonus round, right?
Yeah. But where is he getting that laser whip? Where does he store that thing? Does he have any hedgehog pockets?
We can't ask those kind of questions here on Fine Time. Maybe we can. This is a saucy podcast. We have explicit content.
It's Sonic. It's like at least PG-13. Unless you're a 6-year-old and you just don't know, which bless your heart.
Bless
you
your
don't
heart.
know yet.
There was also those ones where like you go to the ring and then you just fly through cyberspace and you collect a few rings and then you just fly back out.
Yeah.
I was like, that was weird.
Or like, you're floating like just down through the clouds. Yeah. And you just grab some rings and they just show up randomly above certain checkpoints. Like,
yeah,
I didn't try to figure out like how those happen. They just kind of do. Sometimes they happen before a boss, which is nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
But it was just, that was just like when that would happen, I'd be like, why did that happen? You know?
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't get those at all. I'm glad you felt the same way because I was just like, am I missing something here? Because like I don't
couldn't
really
figure
get
it
it.
out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Emerald powers real quick because like
The Emerald
personally,
powers.
I didn't really use these. I largely forgot they existed because, and
That's
you know,
fair.
yeah,
That's
like
fair.
the developers actually said something about this because they said it was like the powers were an incentive for people to actually collect them because they noticed only hardcore people actually get all the emeralds and actually care about that kind of stuff. So they figured if you get powers, then that will incentivize like casuals to get them. I don't think that's it, dog. Like I don't.
Well, the problem is they don't really build the game around the powers.
No.
That's sort of the issue. Like when I finished Sonic's story, I had 5 of them, I think, and I was like, all right, well, let me go through the unlockable mode. And there's a point in the unlockable mode that I couldn't get around without an emerald power, and I didn't have it yet. So I said, well, fuck it. I guess I'll go back and get them all. And then I did. And then I was able to get through it. But like, that's a weird incentive because, again, that's making it more of an incentive for the hardcore people because only like real hardcore people are going to go through the unlockable modes. And so with the unlockable modes, I guess they're just assuming you have the other like emerald powers, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a neat idea, but they don't really build the game around having them as it is like an advantage. You know what I mean? Like they have yet to do in like say a 2D Sonic game, have it to where like after you beat, say like you beat a real tough boss, they give you the emerald and then the emerald gives you those powers and then you can use that power say in the next stage and you can, you know, kind of tweak the level design around sort of the like, oh, you need to find the hidden platforms, you need to slow down time because that would be neat. I would
That
like
would be
that.
neat. That would be
But
neat.
again, they make them as an extra, which in my experience, they only really helped with the bosses. But they helped with the bosses, not necessarily in making them easier. It was more of like, oh, this is how I actually like should beat the boss. Like this feels like the right way to do it.
I did it to avoid some bullshit. Sometimes, basically, is what I used it for. But yeah, I guess they don't hurt the game at any. They're just not
No.
really that exciting.
It feels like a brainstorming idea for what they could do. You know, like as you said with like the 2.5D stuff, like they could definitely in the next game really emphasize the emerald powers in a unique way to make the next game more. But you know, who knows?
Yeah, just you know, and about those 2.5D things, they don't have to do much. They could have even done what's that thing at the end of I think it's at the end of Sonic 3 where you kind of run up the tower, you're running around the tower, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imagine that like in a 3D kind of space, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's all I want, really. I just kind of want some more flair that way.
Yeah. And I love that when he's doing that, like the blocks are like that are falling are slowly catching up to him, and you're like, "Oh shit, he's not gonna do it," but then he does, you know?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just some stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
That's all I really want. I gotta talk music because of course I do. I
Well, it's
love
Sonic.
Sonic music, and
Yeah.
it's Sonic. Of course we gotta talk music.
That's the thing. That's the one part of Sonic that everybody agrees, like the music is good.
Even Sonic 06. Sonic
Yeah.
06, the music is banging. I love the music.
It's still some butt rock.
Yeah, I love it.
It works for Sonic, yeah.
Yeah, it does. I love the butt rock era. I love the classic era, and obviously this takes after rather the classic stuff. And so when it was announced, or when we found out rather, that RZS was making Sonic Superstars, and I was at my most pessimistic, then we found out that Jun Senowet and T. Lopes are working on this soundtrack, and that made me super happy as fuck. So I think the music here is pretty fantastic, in my opinion. T. Lopes kind of essentially continues his Sonic Mania work. You know, it's bright, it's jazzy. You could hear it in all those like early levels, like the, you know, what is it? Bridge, almost like Bridge Carnival. I know that's not it. And Speed Jungle, you know, you hear it there. Pinball Carnival, especially. He's working it, right?
Yeah.
And so excellent stuff there. And then in between that, you get Sky Temple, which one zone, by the way, that's kind of weird. And then you get that familiar like Genesis snare, but then the rest of the music sounds modern, like kind of over it. So it's like, okay, they're using like an old thing and matching it with new. Okay, I understand that. But then at some point, like more than halfway through the game, I would say, I guess when you start getting to like Golden Capital and Frozen Base and shit like that, and like Press Factory, the music starts turning completely Genesis. And I'm like, what happened? Like we were grooving and schmooving with the T-Lope stuff, and then the June Senaway. I know it's June Senaway because he loves that Genesis shit. So like, because like whenever he does like classic stuff, he does the Genesis, which is fine. I just don't know if that was. I feel like T-Lopes and June Senaway got like two different assignments. They told T-Lopes do the Sonic Mania stuff. They told June Senaway we're making a classic Sonic game, and those two ideas don't really mesh.
Maybe what they did was they had both guys make complete soundtracks, and then they picked the best ones or the ones they liked more.
Probably that is probably what happened, but like sonically they don't really fit together, which I don't know how much of a problem that is, because I do think like Golden Palace is like incredible. That's my favorite zone, by the way. And like
Golden Capital.
Golden, is it Golden Capital?
I think it's Golden.
I said Golden Palace.
It's the one with all the rings.
Yeah, and you like fly and you go into I see, that's my favorite actually. And I think the music there is great, but it's just kind of a Genesis song. So it feels like kind of, I mean, how much do I want to complain about a great song, right? But it just doesn't feel like it fit the first part of the game where weren't sounding like that.
Well, you're not big on the Genesis sound chip in general.
I'm not, but when it comes to Sonic, obviously that's a big exception because Sonic music is incredible. So
because the original composers really use that Yamaha synthesis chip to their advantage. What's the official name? The Yamaha YM2612.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And like, so yeah, I think the music here is great overall. I just feel like I wish it had more of a unified front on what it was going to sound like, because I feel like it's a bit jarring when you get to like the second half of the game and it's mostly Genesis-y music. Genesis-y.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, for me, I thought the music was fine. Nothing really stuck out to me, to be honest. I haven't gone back and listened to it. I probably should. But this is like the first Sonic game in quite a while where I was like, yeah, the music's fine, but nothing really caught my ear. You know, what caught my ear most was the trying to blend the more kind of Genesis like drum samples with like more kind of modern instrumentation, which I thought was pretty cool. But I don't know. Nothing was that noticeable for me. I don't know. I should definitely go back and listen to it again, you know, just to try to get a feel for it, because I like listening to like Sonic music kind of by itself. Like I have the entire Sonic 3 and Knuckles soundtrack on my phone, and I'll just listen to it randomly. You know, I could listen to Hydrosity Act 1 and 2 on a loop till the day I die.
I'm glad you're a Hydrosity person. People who say Hydro City make me insane.
It's Hydrosity.
Yeah, I don't know why. Okay,
it's confirmed. For a long time I didn't make the Hydro City connection, you know, because it was one word. I was like, Hydrosity.
Yeah.
If there were two words, it'd be fine, like Marble Garden.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I have to bitch about this, and I'm sorry. I know it's hard to put anything in the face of Mario Wonder, but I have to in this instance. It's the sound effects. So
yeah.
Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Every time they put out outside of the new Super Mario Brothers series where they just use the same shit, every Mario game has its own sound font. Yeah, it's all coins and pipes and jumping and like they're familiar, but they always do them new. One of the best things about Super Mario World is like Mario, like the Marios on NES did all sound different from each other as well. But when you got to Super Mario World, hearing the new coin sound and jump sound and whatever other sounds to go along with, like, you know, the pipe or the new sounds like the spin jump or the cape or whatever. All of that stuff sounded incredible. And it's just, and I feel that way about Mario Wonder. Like when you jump, it almost sounds like a bended like guitar note now. It sounds crazy good. And like the coin sounds and pipe sounds in Mario Wonder sound excellent. They did them all new and fresh. Sonic Superstars just uses the Genesis sound effects, man. It's literally just like Sonic. It's just like the jump, the coins getting hit, everything, even jumping on stuff that it's just everything. And I do like those sound effects. Just like, man, do we have to? We couldn't even make new sound effects for Sonic Superstars. Like that matters to me. It just makes the game feel a lot more fresh if you give it a fresh sound font that way, in my opinion.
To be fair, Sega has been using those sound effects since the start.
I know.
Like how many Sonic games have a different jump sound? Or how many Sonic games use the exact same coin getting sound that they've used since Sonic 1? It's the exact same one every fucking time.
Sonic Adventure has some fresh sounds. I mean, they do use some old ones, but like they're not.
I do like the spin dash sound in Adventure 1. The whoosh, I always like that. I wish they bring that back. But yeah, I could see that, but it's so ingrained in the Sonic fandom, like Sonic's jump sound, that whoop,
yeah,
or the ring collect and all that. It's so ingrained that I think for the most part people don't really think about it one way or the other. Or maybe it's just Sonic Team's afraid to try something a little different. Because Wonder does try to do a lot of that, like kind of fresh Nintendo polish stuff on there, and some of it I like, some of it I don't. The bit I always like is when you go through a pipe and then like his hat doesn't come with him and he has to grab it real quick. Like, I like that. That kind of like the more kind of visual stuff, but some of the audio stuff I'm kind of 50-50 on. But I don't mind the Genesis sound effects. But me, I love the Sega Genesis. I love that sound chip. I grew up with it. It means a lot to me. Like Genesis music to me that's just 16-bit sound. That's what it sounds like to me. It's crunchy. It's a little dirty. It's gritty, but it has a really nice vibe to it. You know what I mean?
Okay, we have to talk about the worst aspect of the game before we get out of here. We have to talk about the bosses. Because, my God. See, so on the surface, I don't think they're actually bad. I think a lot of them are like well designed and they're really good ideas. I think there's a lot of great ingenuity that went into making them. The attack patterns and the way they play out, though, is so fucking boring. Oh my God.
And
they take slow. They take forever to cycle around to like being able to hit them. And if you don't figure out how to hit them right away, you're going to be doing that for a long time to figure out.
Yes.
There was one boss that changed how you hit them in the middle of it. Do you remember it? Because like there was one you're just bopping on them.
About.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have to like, halfway through the boss, you have to hit the stuff in midair to hit it back to him. But there's no indication that you're supposed to do that.
Oh, the desert snake one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, man, they're just so slow and boring, man. And again, it sucks because I really do think the designs of them are cool and like the actual attack patterns, like they seem fun. Can we just speed this up by like 50%?
Yeah. The one I liked the most was probably the spider boss. I quite liked the spider boss because it was interesting how it was pretty dynamic, but dynamic in like an intuitive way where it's like, oh, you're using the legs to like climb up and hit him. And then near the end, it's like, no, you have to use the legs to actually hit him. Yeah. Exactly. And they're done in like really unique ways. My issue with the bosses, with the slow stuff, it mainly comes to the final boss at the end of Death Egg, which I will say with Death Egg, I like the way the like Act 1 and 2 are presented. Because with the end, it's like you go all the way to the end, you fight the boss, and then Eggman says, no, fuck you, I'm going back in time, and you have to play the whole thing in reverse, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was
cool too.
But the very last boss, like the big issue I have with the very last boss is they don't checkpoint you. And because it's so long and boring, and like each boss takes about like 6 hits, and most of them it's like you have to wait a couple seconds, or at least in this case you might have to wait like at least a minute before you can actually hit them, right?
It's so long.
So you do the first phase, which is like 6 hits, right? And then once you do that, then it comes to the second phase, and that takes like 6+ hits or whatever. And if you die, you have to do the whole thing in one go. They don't checkpoint you in the middle of it, which, could be a thing. It's so annoying because the final boss in Sonic's story took me so fucking long
Me too.
because of that. And then, at the end of the game, when you beat it, you unlock the story of this character named Trip, who is one of like the characters that's working with Robotnik, and also Fang. Bringing back Fang the sniper, I thought was really cool.
That was cool.
I like him. And when you play as Trip, the game's quite different because Trip can like double jump and can attach the walls and everything, but the stages are much harder. So Trip is kind of like the secret hard mode in the game. And some parts of that I liked, some parts of it I didn't like. But the final boss in Trip's story, I couldn't beat it. I tried so many times and it was just so frustrating. I just said, fuck it, and just kind of stopped playing it. Because again, it doesn't checkpoint you. Because the first half I was doing no problem. But I would get to the second half and I would say mess up one little thing. And and the final boss in Trip's story one-shots you so easily. It's fucking ridiculous, man. That it's just not worth it.
That sounds awful.
Because if you beat Trip's story, then you unlock the last story, which is just the final boss, which is just a purple dragon.
Okay.
Yeah. You can look it up if you want to see it. And
I probably will now that I know that's what it is.
Yeah, it's very underwhelming. It's not like, say, in Mario Odyssey where you fight that random giant dragon in that like the Dark Souls looking world or whatever. Like that was cool.
God.
Like
that was
cool.
insane.
Yeah, this is just not. It's they completely fucked up the boss part, and it upsets me because I wanted to beat both of them, but I just couldn't do it, man. And
I understand.
Like I was raging. I was like throwing my controller in rage.
Oh, man.
So that's when I'm like, I should stop.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. When you become an adult, when you start raging, you have to be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I can't be doing this. Like, I'm better than this. I have other things to do. I'm not going to struggle like this.
I don't know if you know the game by Platinum Games for 360 called Vanquish.
Yeah, I have it over there. Fucking love Vanquish.
That was the last game. That was the last game that made me throw my controller.
I can see that.
It was so fucking frustrating sometimes. I love that game, but there is some really cheap shit sometimes.
Oh yeah, but to be fair, you can kind of cheese your way around it. If you
you can, but it has some classic Shinji Mikami cheap shit. That is like,
absolutely.
That's the last game that made me throw my controller. I don't think I've thrown a controller since. You mentioned checkpoints, and I'm glad you did, because that's also my issue. If you're going to make something that long and slow and boring, then you need to have checkpoints. Now, I'm not the person to be calling for checkpoints in platformers. Our friend Dave from Tales of the Backlog a while ago did a little thing on Mario 3, and he was complaining about checkpoints. I'm saying to my phone, shut the fuck up, bro. Like, you don't need... Those levels are like 2 minutes long. You don't need checkpoints in these. You know what I mean?
Well, to be fair, I think it's like he didn't grow up with the Mario games. So his perception of them are much different than you and I. Like, I've been playing Mario 3 ever since I was a little kid. I don't know how many times I've beaten that game. Like, I know that game so well. And then also my buddy Chris from A Novel Console says he can't get past the first castle in World 1.
Oh,
and
boy.
I'm like, Bubby, do I need to like come over and tell you how to play the game? Like, I'm willing to do it. Again, it's just our perception because we know Mario and Sonic so well that when people struggle with it, it's just in your head, you're like, but how you're a grown adult,
Yeah.
But to be fair, some of the like the further and you get to Mario 3, say like world like 6 and 7, they start getting kind of like Pipe World can be fucking like unfair at times.
It's really tough, but
but I love it. I love it.
No, it is great. That's kind of my problem with Mario Wonder. It's too easy. I want a little more bite. But like
I want harder Mario.
Exactly. But like it takes less time to do the entirety of Bowser's Castle in Mario 3 and beat Bowser than it is to play that fucking Sonic Superstars boss over and over because it's so long.
And that Bowser's Castle level has some like pretty tough platforming and like those laser statues that like which as a kid freaked me out. I was like, holy, that freaked me the fuck out. And then the Bowser battle itself isn't difficult as long as you know what you're doing. that one can take a while.
It can take a while, but if you die, yeah, you have to do the stage over, but that's not really a big deal because at that point you know what to do. And like I said, I was just, I wanted to make the old school game example because it's like people might say about that Sonic Superstars thing, well, that's how old games were. No, they fucking weren't, because they never made you wait that long to like kill a boss or whatever. They gave you that satisfaction. Okay, fight.
And with Bowser at 3, you're just trying to have him break the blocks.
Yes.
Which, if you know what you're doing, you can have him break like maybe 3 blocks and he dies.
Yeah. If you want to get really, or if you have like a few power-ups on, you could do a little sacrifice action, just have them pop through as you get hit, and then
exactly.
You're done.
Exactly. There are usual ways of kind of getting around it, or ways of making it more of an active participation. And having a boss, particularly in a Sonic game, be this sort of like slow, meandering, waiting for the right time thing. Like this isn't fucking Dark Souls, okay? Like it doesn't need, you don't need to be sitting there waiting for the right frame to do a hit, It's like, this isn't that, It needs to be quick, because even the older Sonic games, even if you had to wait, they weren't that bad. And a lot of times you were and you were trying to wait to find the right time, to hit it. You know what I mean? And then say, like, I learned many years later in Aquatic Ruin in Sonic 2, if you find a way onto those like statues, and you can just stay on there and just hit him until he dies, like you can make that battle like 10 seconds.
Yep, you can. And there's no such thing as Sonic Superstars. You just kind of have to tough it out. And that's where I use the to get away from his cheap ass like swinging arms, in his second phase.
Yeah.
I used the Emerald Power. I don't remember which one, to get away from that as good as I could, because it was just like I was so tired of dying to that and just like getting just cheaply like ground to dust by those things. Oh my god, it was awful.
Yeah, because some of the bosses are also like in motion, where you have to sort of like, you'll be floating on a platform and kind of trying to guide yourself around or whatever. And those, like, some people complain about that in Sonic Advance too. Like all the bosses are just like, you're just kind of running and trying to time your jumps. But I like those in Advance too, because they're all kind of the same thing, but they work and they keep up with the momentum of the game. And here it's like the momentum just grinds to an absolute halt.
Yeah, it's awful. And I'm so sick I got so sick of hearing Jun Senoe's boss theme, just because oh my god. And it's a good one, but like, good god, these things take so long to kill that it's just like,
absolutely.
I'm so tired of hearing it.
It's the biggest flaw this game has. If they had better boss battles, like, I think this game would be much higher in quality. But I will say, what is this game's Metacritic at the moment?
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Probably like low, probably high 70s, I would imagine. 78, 79. That's what I'm going to guess. Let's see. What do you have a guess before you look?
Last time I saw it was like 75.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. It is on PS5. It has a 73. On Xbox, it has a 76. On Switch, it has a 71. So
interesting.
If I
we
were
could
to
average that out to about a 70, 73 and a half ish.
And I think that's too low.
I think that's too low as well. I think it should be high 70s, not low 70s.
I'd give it at most an 80.
I think when I did my little skeet on Blue Sky, I think I gave it like a B minus. Yes, I'm sorry. I call them skeets. I'm one of those people.
That has a different meaning, my man.
Exactly. And I gave it a B minus just because those bosses were terrible.
Yeah. Oh, you go by letter grades, eh?
Yeah, I do letter grades. I almost wanted to give it a C plus because they were so, but I was like, no, there's too many good aspects of this game to do that to it.
Yeah, I would give Sonic Superstars a B minus.
Yeah, that's about how I feel about it. I think we said all the things. Okay, let's play a little game before we leave.
Ooh.
Can you guess my favorite Sonic character?
When were they introduced?
Oh man, I don't know if I get that. Feels like too much of a okay, in the 90s. Let's just say in the 90s.
Are they a classic character or a modern character?
Classic.
Knuckles.
Vector. I'm a Vector man.
What? Vector? Why?
Yeah, I love Vector. Why not?
I guess.
Nobody likes Vector but me? I don't know. Okay, I guess.
It's just Vector's a weird choice. I don't know.
I don't know. I've always
Well,
liked Vector.
Maybe it's just because I know him most from like Knuckles Chaotix, which is a interesting game, and then him and Sonic Heroes, where it's like him and Charmy are like, hey, we can get money, and then SBO's like, what? Because I like SBO quite a bit.
I like SBO too.
I think SBO is underrated and underutilized.
Me too.
As a character, he could definitely be more.
I really
Well,
do.
can
like
you guess
SBO
my
one.
favorite Sonic character?
See, that's what I was going to do next. You don't feel like a Tails man.
I like Tails, but he's not my favorite.
Yeah. You know,
But who doesn't like Tails? Like
I don't know.
Everybody
I like
likes
Tails.
Tails. Yeah, he's adorable.
Okay, I don't know how. I feel like I might be wrong about this. I'm going to say Amy.
No.
No? Okay,
Ugh.
who is it? Okay,
I've
wow.
always kind of hated Amy, to be honest.
Okay,
Well,
interesting.
if I had to pick a favorite, it's Knuckles.
Okay.
I've always liked Knuckles. He's just an interesting character. But also, I like SBO. And another character I wish they would do more with is Cream. Cream the Rabbit.
I like Cream as well.
I love Cream the Rabbit. She's great.
Yeah, I don't know how she could fit into any current like continuity.
I don't know why they don't use her anymore.
She could have been in this game, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Though my theory is that because Amy always was kind of like annoying,
yeah.
you know, and then but more recently she's become more of like the sweet, innocent kind of helper, right? But if you think about it, that was Cream's personality. So did they like kill Cream and then just implant her brain into Amy so that Amy is now like the Cream character, but she doesn't have the little Chow with her, you know, which made, say, Sonic Advance 2, where, you know, she has her little, she can just summon her Chow to wreck shit, you know, makes that game super fucking easy, which is great when you're like a little kid playing the game.
I love Chow.
Yeah, I think Cream's a great design. You know, she's kind of a Tails-ish character, but, you know, she's her own thing, you know, but like Cream, SBO, and Knuckles are my favorite. Those are my three favorite.
And I don't know why I like Vector so much. Maybe it's the goofy voice they gave him in Sonic Heroes, which I love. He just sounds like some 2-bit thug or whatever. It's great. I don't know why.
The Chaotix gang are 2-bit thugs. Let's be honest. They're the Wario and Waluigi of Sonic.
They are, but I'm surprised you were so surprised. It's not like I said Charmy B or something. That I feel like that would be weird.
If you said Silver, I probably would have left. Silver's the worst.
I don't hate Silver. I'm not saying I like Silver. I don't hate Silver.
I kind of hate Silver, though. I like Blaze the Cat.
I like Blaze the Cat as well. Blaze is cool. All
Blaze
right.
is cool.
Let's get the hell out of here. Thanks for joining me for this, Thrak. I can't imagine anyone else who I would have talked Sonic with for this. Short of torturing the guys on the main show of me talking about Sonic Superstars, I'm glad I got to do it this way with you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm always ready to talk about Sonic at almost any given period.
All right.
It's you know, a series I hold a big passion for, and I'm always ready to talk about it whenever. I mean, hell, me and Bill talked about the whole series in 2 parts that probably went about like 6 hours. So
Jesus Christ,
there's a lot. There's a lot. To be fair, there's a lot to talk about.
Of course
Sonic,
there is.
So,
of course there is. You know, yeah. I got to check that out. I shouted out also when I was recording with Dave not too long ago, whenever that airs, I shouted out the 3DO experience. I really enjoy listening to that. I know you guys are on hiatus right now, but
just for right now.
I still want everybody to go check that out, the 3DO experience. You cover 1 or 2 3DO games per show. I really enjoyed that shit, especially your episode on D. I really enjoyed listening to that, just because you guys are younger than me and I was there when it came out and you kind of weren't really of the mind for it. So it's interesting hearing that different perspective of some
that game
of
was, that game's a pain.
Yeah, it's insane. So yeah, go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, everybody check the description of this podcast for more socials, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
We'll see you next time on Fine Time.